Welcome, everybody, to this week's edition of Inside the GM Studio podcast, all about the tabletop RPG hobby. First notes to give out, David. I had a couple comments, as well as an email about the last episode that were all about you.
Oh, no.
The first one was Rebecca saying, was David channeling Batman 66 when he was talking about classic games and how there was always a certain trap, dungeon, or creature that we would always end up getting into? So were you kind of thinking of Batman when you were thinking of a trap or creature or dungeon that was a death trap?
I'm trying to... This was not last week's episode, but the week before?
No, this was last week's. Not the community question. The main topic. When we were talking about the... what was it? The cultures of play with classic gaming.
I wasn't deliberately doing that, but rest assured, Rebecca, I did watch Batman 66 like every day after school for years. So I'm sure it's still in there somewhere, in delineating what's in the rat's nest of my brain.
And Rebecca, now you're showing your age when you're bringing up 60s Batman.
Yeah, it's so... Not on purpose, but I'm sure that it was informative. I never really thought about it, but yeah, a lot of that stuff is.
I know. I'm a huge 60s Batman fan, and I didn't even think of it when you were saying it, so I'm glad somebody caught it.
You're a way bigger nerd on that than I am. I kind of...
The second one was Ben said that he wholeheartedly sides with you with the libertarian comment that you made, that classic players are also libertarians.
Yeah, I never, it's funny because I never really, I just kind of arrived at that conclusion on the spot while we were talking about it. Like,
it was a really good metaphor.
Like, oh, yeah.
But yeah, everybody was they're on your side. Everybody's comments were about everything that you had to say about classic OSR and traditional games. David was right.
Well, good to know that I'm not crazy and on an island out here. I mean, I'd be curious to hear from the people that do think I'm a maniac, but they probably don't listen to this show more than like 15 seconds. So they're like, oh, I gotta get out of here.
This motherfucker again. This week, I have the big question to ask David. Mm-hmm. What's wrong with multiclassing?
Oh, God.
For those out there that don't know, multiclassing is a mechanical and narrative design choice that changes what your character can do, how they interact with the party and the game world, and kind of what they can, what kind of role they can fill in as. Players choose multiclassing for four principal reasons, really: to expand mechanical capability, to optimize power and synergy, to pursue a distinct role or flavor, and to enable cheater-driven this is for much later. To enable character-driven stories. Below our comment, getting a little Freudian there for later. Below as I have on my list here, I will share some common motivations, concrete effects, trade-offs, and practical guidance when it comes to multiclassing. But David and I are kind of on the opposite ends of this. We're on the opposite ends of the street when it comes to multiclassing. I'm a big fan of multiclassing. David is very much against it. So that was kind of my thoughts of multiclassing. I want to know what yours are, David, because I've never actually talked to you about multiclassing that much. You allow us to do it, which is very kind of you.
Okay, I wouldn't say that I'm firmly against it. So
true, because like I just said, you do let us do it.
Yeah, it's not that I wouldn't even say I'm firmly against it in spirit. There's just some problems that it runs aground of, and I'm skeptical of the reasoning for it a lot of the time. Also, it just seems like the whole point of multi-classing, and by the way, this is narrowly focused on Dungeons and Dragons. So for other games, I will say multi-classing is more well suited to the game,
Hmm.
and almost kind of mandatory for some games. And actually, in one case, I can think of it is mandatory. Like
Yeah,
you have
you could
you
probably think
have
of
to,
two of them.
yeah. And so my problem with it is like to say what's wrong with it is really to be like you're trying to be two versions. What's wrong with a spork? Nothing. You can eat with a spork, right? But the thing is it's a terrible fork and it's a terrible spoon. And it just benefits from being both of them at the same time. But
Hmm.
in doing so, kind of ruins either operation. And
Okay.
so this is part of my biggest thing with Dungeons and Dragons is that it is a team-based role-playing game. And so you're choosing a role in that party. And it doesn't need to be like necessarily class specific or even role specific like a tank or whatever, but you know, maybe you're the face or you're the leader or you're the uh you know, you could be role based or the support character, you're the mobile character, you know.
Hmm.
And so leaning into those things, the thing that you provide the unique role in the party for, to me encourages cooperation, it encourages teamwork, and it also like gives you a purpose and other people can lean on you, and this builds camaraderie and it builds um, inter-character respect. When you try to be all things, like, or you try to be too many things, then you're either doing them poorly, and in which case, why are you doing them? You might have a tool for every occasion, but uh, there's going to be a very short runway on it,
Hmm.
right? So it's just like when you select spells, right? Like it's good to have a spell for each, for a variety of different circumstances, but generally speaking, you kind of go like, okay, how many attack spells do I need? How many defensive spells do I need? How many utility spells do I need? How many exploration spells do I need? And you kind of break down like what sort of wizard my character is, what sort of cleric is my character, and and you try to orient your spells toward that role. Multi-classing kind of like expands that principle like to the point where you're trying to be a variety of different things. And I guess I'm always skeptical that it's appropriate for a given character. Multi-classing makes sense to me when it comes about organically throughout the story and the character's arc. Maybe
Mm.
you start off as a rough and tumble rogue in the inner city, but then you know you're traveling and you're picking up skills, and your character has left that life behind. So it really doesn't make much sense to continue progressing in the rogue class because now you're becoming much more of a silver tongued charlatan, and you're picking up magic along the way. And so it makes sense to kind of like organically multi-class into a bard, something like that.
Hmm.
And I'm just skeptical that players use it for that. They usually use it to optimize for certain traits and end up putting characters multi-classing into classes that make very little sense just so they can like, "Oh, I want to get this thing at level 1." And you're trying to piecemeal together as some sort of fucking ubermensch. And it's to me antithetical to the spirit of a team-based RPG. And so I just am always really leery of it, wary of it,
Mm.
I guess, is kind of my general standpoint. But it's not that I haven't thought it made sense for certain characters to multi-class, and I've even created plot scenarios where it kind of became necessary, like with Beto's character, and he lost his patron. He was a warlock, and so I was like, okay, here's your options. Until you can't gain any levels in warlock from this patron anymore because you breached the bargain.
Hmm.
So what you can do is you can multi-class into another class if you want. And the most viable options for that are things that are kind of somewhat adjacent to the party members that you've been traveling with. So you have a wizard in the party or whatever, maybe you could learn some arcane magic. Maybe you could be a wizard, maybe you could be something else. But you can't just pull something out of the middle of nowhere. You got sucked into Barovia, you've been a warlock your whole adventuring career. No one in your party is a rogue. Where are you picking up these rogue skills? Right? They
Hmm.
make no sense. So but I like it when it happens organically like that, and when a player is kind of thoughtful about the trajectory of his character, not just like it would be cool to get sneak attack and I'll take a level of whatever because it's really power gamey for that
Yeah.
reason a lot of the time. So
I didn't know. So I was doing a little digging on, like you said, this is mostly for Dungeons and Dragons, going more into like D20 based games or games that want to be like D&D. But so in AD&D, there was dual classing and there was
mhm.
multi-classing.
Yes, there was.
I don't know the difference. I never looked into what the difference was. I remember when Jace, your brother Jason, uh,
Hmm.
he wanted to do the fighter mage, and I think we
Hmm.
played like 3 levels of that campaign. He got to do it. But do you remember what the difference was of dual classing and multi-classing?
Well, I mean, obviously, dual classing is just two, and multi
Yeah.
classing is when you do more than two. But it has to do with the available benefits that are for you. And but the specifics, I don't think I ever had anyone multi-class,
No.
just dual class, and so
Yeah, and I
I
think they
didn't
had
really
like
ever.
certain layouts for if you wanted to dual class, you could only do this, this, or this. Because I remember
Yeah,
like
that was
there was one for there was a thief mage, the fighter mage, and then there was one other one that I can't remember, but there was just like you can only do these if you're going to dual class, and there's a whole system for that.
yeah, it's but and there's requirements, in second edition you have requirements even just for basic classes. Like you couldn't be a paladin unless you had a 17 or better
Yeah.
charisma. Um, and so yeah, I don't remember the parameters for that, but what ends up happening is because if you multi-class, then the class that you started with, whatever that class is, even if you just multi-class one level into another class, you will never see the full potential of that class because
Right.
you only
Yep.
get 20 levels. It's not
Yep.
like you can suddenly be a 40 level character, right? And so you just never see the full potential of the class. For systems, I think it makes sense for systems that are predicated on high levels of travel, and they frame them a little bit like Barbarians of Lemuria does, which
Mhm.
is these are careers. They're
Yeah.
chapters of your life, and they govern what skills you have access to, like in a like by which I mean hard skills, not like class features. You don't get class features, right? That's
Hmm.
what mucks up the works in D&D is because a class is more like it isn't like a role. It's almost like an
No, it's a template.
identity.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's almost not it's not what your character does, it's who your character is.
Yep.
And so that's much more archetypical than something like Barbarians of Lemuria, which is like, well, you just really don't have class features. You kind of get you build your guy up from the ground based on the boons and the flaws and the
Hmm.
things like that. You just kind of cobble it together. And careers represent, well, like, oh, I used to, they're more like jobs.
Yep.
Oh, I used to work as a carpenter, so I know how to swing a hammer. But then, I also worked in an office, so I'm good at clerical work. I
Yeah.
did that for a few years, and how long you did each one of them for would govern how good you were at it. That
Yeah.
that seems more.
It kind of reminds me of the old Warhammer Fantasy. In that system, you started with just a career. You were a 0 level gardener or carpenter or blacksmith, and then as you gained more experience, you started getting into adventure titles where you could work
Mhm.
up towards a different. You start as a cut purse, and then later on you become a thief, and then later you become a rogue, and it was a little bit more like that. It wasn't exactly multi-classing; it was more like tiers, like how I was gonna in third edition D&D, multi-classing became very, very popular because they really made it very simple and they made it almost like a point of the game because they did their prestige classes where you put together other classes to make this one big one that was like the uber class, ultra powerful class. They tried to get rid of it in fourth edition where they stated that multi-classing was a GM choice. It was not one that they really were just like, yeah, you can do this, or like, you can do this if you want. Here's some mechanics on how to do it, but we're not exactly in for it. Because they were like, we have tier systems now. We have your heroic tier and your paragon path and your epic destiny, and that was kind of like
Mhm.
their multi-classing. And same thing with 5th edition. I didn't know that they didn't say that, yes, multi-classing is a regular mechanic. It's completely fleshed out. This is just kind of like a bonus thing that you could do if you wanted. They said that between backgrounds and subclasses, there should be no reason for anybody to multi-class. Well, okay, that's fine with me. I could see that, but I have a little list here of why players multi-class, at least some motivations.
Okay.
Number 1, mechanical flexibility. Gain access to new abilities, spells, or proficiencies that the base class lacks. Like a fighter taking levels in Rogue for expertise and sneak attack. Like David already said. That's one of the big ones I've noticed, that whenever people multi-class, they're just like, oh, I take a level in Rogue, first of all, to get sneak attack, and then some fighter, and then I'll take some wizard, because then I can use action surge to cast another spell, which they got rid of in the 2024 new rules. You can no longer use action surge for spells. Another reason why players multi-class is optimization and synergy. They combine class features that interact strongly, like a paladin's divine smite with a sorcerer's meta magic via sorcery points and smite loops. This is kind of what I do when I multi-class, is I find good synergies. I am more of the fan of what's going to be down here, more towards the bottom, thematic and narrative reasons. Because I always like to build my character to what I like them to be, and I make my own class, and I find multi-classing I can do that. Role or niche plugging, fill missing party roles. I think this is something else that you already said, David. Like if you needed a healer, a controller, a skill monkey, a face, without changing class identity completely, you can multi-class into something that fills that little gap that you need.
Yeah. So it's so far though, all three of these things just fall under the umbrella of power gaming.
Yep. Yeah.
But continue.
Thematic or narrative reasons. Represent training, trauma, destiny, or a calling in the character's story, like a noble knight who studies magic. That's my big favorite thing. With holy fuck, I already forgot his name. My bard that I played, my rogue bard, going into Hexblade Warlock that I played in the Curse of Strahd game. I made him that he was just a master of the sword. He was a master duelist and fencer, and I just wanted that theme for him, and everything that I took worked for him. Like, I wasn't a spell casting warlock really. I just wanted the Hexblade bonuses that I used here and there to give it a little bit of flavor. The last one I have for motivations is unusual build. Oh, what? Stopped?
Yeah, you cut out there for a minute. I don't know if that was...
Yeah, it said our recording stopped. Uh-oh, that's no good. Hold on.
It shows it's recording.
All right, you still there?
Yeah, now I see two of you.
Okay, that was weird. Really?
I see two of you, one that's frozen and one that's on the left now.
That's a bullshit.
It's weird.
Huh. This can't be. Oh, and it says that we're still recording. All right, fucking groovy.
There's three of you in the people in the chat too.
Oh, awesome. Okay. Let's see. Where was I? Let's get rid of this.
Fourth point.
Yep. Unusual build goals for fun. Create novel, cinematic, or comedic combinations like a barbarian sorcerer, or AKA a rage mage. There's also the barbarian. Everybody loves the barbarian. It's always the barbarian multi-class that people have a lot of fun with. But those are like the main motivations for usually why people multi-class. Like you said, a good majority of them, the first three was all very power gaming. And then the last two were just kind of like, we're just having some fun, making jokes, and then, thematic and narrative.
Yeah, it's so like the last two, like the last one, I don't have a problem with, but I've noticed that when players pull that lever, it's almost, I don't like how zany it makes the game. They almost do it like to make the game like more cartoonish, And if you're, and that's fine. I don't have a problem with that, but I have a tendency to run games that are a little more straightforward and rely a little more on like dramatic tension and like I like there to be high stakes and for the characters to kind of, for lack of a better word, take the situation seriously. And when you have that kind of cartoonish element, it undermines it to a to at least a little bit of a degree. Mike was notorious for this when he played with us. Is like he was always just kind of a goofball,
Hmm.
and it seemed like he was never really like taking the situation as seriously as one ought if you were playing the character as he were. But he's not much for role playing, but and some things are on the fence. Like we played in a game where Patrick had a gnome barbarian, and that was
Hmm.
like kind of cartoonish, but also
Yeah.
kind of cool. Like it was neat. And then the penultimate one, that's the one that I would hope players would uh the thread that they would pull on. That's the one that I do not mind multi-classing at all if it represents an organic progression of the character. But more often than not, when a player pulls on that thread, I really get the sense that what it is they're doing one of the first three things, and then they're trying to kind of be like, well, but it would make sense, like,
Hmm.
for my character's arc, because they think that that's just they're playing into their audience. And it's like, look, I'm not going to tell you you can't do it, and I'm not even going to be like upset, but just know that you're like disappointing me a little bit. Like you don't need to give me an explanation why you want to do what you're going to do with your character. I allow it. If I didn't want to allow it, I just would say no.
Hmm.
But it seems like they're like, yeah, but I mean, it just makes sense that I would take a level of rogue because this, that, or the other. It's like, and then fast forward a few levels, it's like, oh, it's really amazing how it's suddenly like for like a one blip on the radar for one level you wanted to get a class feature and that was the arc of your character, but then you just immediately returned right to like the same character you already had and there was none of that in there. And so yeah, the other ones though, like yeah, flexibility and filling a role, it's like yeah, that's what you call power gaming. You want synergies. You
Yep.
want to try to stack things up on top of one another, and it's it's almost always for mechanical benefits. And the thing is, and the reason that I can say that with a fair degree of certainty is when you have multi-class modes, let's like multi-class, uh, yeah, let's just call them modes. When you have
Hmm.
a mode of multi-class in a game that doesn't really do much beyond kind of say govern the set of skills that you have. It doesn't give you like a class feature like in Barbarians of Lemuria. It just goes, okay, you know, uh, you're you have a slave background and slaves are good at a certain thing, and then you kind of transitioned into like noble, and then nobles are good at certain things, and so it just governs like make a case for why you should your proficiency your ranks in this particular class or particular career would apply to a role, and that's all it is. It's just applying to a role. It's not like suddenly you get this thing where you have more damage output, or suddenly you get this thing where you have different magical spells, or suddenly you get this thing where you have all this. When you strip that away, and you give players full reign and full options, they often don't dabble around. They often kind of pick one or two things and stay in a lane because it's so they have full character reign and they can just and it's almost expected more in a game like that you're gonna have a variety of careers that you accumulate. But they tend to accumulate them more organically. They go,
Hmm.
okay, well, I'm a low level now, and they wouldn't even think about taking it. I have four careers to start, and you have four ranks, and you can divide them up how you see fit. Very few players put one rank in each career, right? They usually go like a 2-1-1 or a 2-2, and then they kind of lean into a couple of careers for a while, and then they go, okay, now I'm gonna maybe kind of once it gets up there pretty good, I'm gonna expand a little bit. And to me, this is an indicator that players don't really want that. They want them for purely mechanical purposes because the more mechanical benefits multi-classing has, the more players do it.
Hmm.
That's why you see a lot of it in third edition D&D, and not as much of it in other things that don't provide as stark of a benefit where you can, layer them over the top of one another, right? Like, Like if you suddenly had like some mechanic that was like said they don't stack. It's like, oh no, when you make an attack, it's either sneak attack damage or it's hex damage.
Yep.
You pick one or the other, and you would suddenly it wouldn't be like, oh, I want to multi-class into like rogue, and I want to like have my, whatever. My hunter. It's hunter's mark or hex. Like, it's sneak attack damage or hunter's mark, and
Yep.
that you would see players suddenly not doing that as much because it didn't stack.
Hmm. You want to know some of the trade-offs to weigh when that some players should think of if they want to multi-class?
I'm
Some of
sure I
these,
have
I
some
think
thoughts.
some of these, I think you've already actually brought up as well. Like the first one here, delay a higher tier features and feats. Multi-class and often postpones ability score improvements and
Hmm.
capstone abilities.
Yeah,
If you're not planning on, like, I know that some people talk about like going to level 20 and then multi-classing to keep going and all that, but usually if you multi-class, you're not going to see top tier level for that class. Another one, complexity and bookkeeping. Tracking multiple resources, spells, and class interactions increases big load that you got to deal with
it
while you're playing.
again, although the reason that power gamers gravitate toward it is that they can have so much versatility and they're confident that they can manage all of those
Hmm.
resources. Lower level players hardly ever really want to do that,
Right?
or
Yeah.
lower experienced
You
players.
say bookkeeping at all, and there's a lot of players that hell, man, they don't even know how just one class works.
Yeah,
Party slash GM expectations ensure multi-classing fits the campaign power level and story consistency, uh, but present the choice as a character decision, not only optimization. That's one thing. Luckily, like I've said before, David has been very gracious when if we say that we're multi-classing, he's never really questioned us about it. But I
mhm.
think that it is something to ask your GM first. Is like, hey, is it cool if I multi-class? Because I know a couple people out there, GMs, that they don't even know what multi-classing is really. They've been
Mhm.
playing D&D for maybe a year or two, and they never looked at the multi-class uh, section, and they don't know how it works, and that could weird them out.
It's well, it also is a kind of so basically what multi-classing is doing is it's trying to thread things that are like in the gaps of the rules, right? Like because you just have these things that are siloed off and nothing says that they can't work together or that you can't do X or whatever. I remember in fourth edition there was a huge gap that they forgot they closed, I think, in the errata or whatever. But there was like some blood mage power that like you threw
Oh,
some fucking damage on
yep.
people, and then if they moved, for every square they moved, they took like X amount of damage. And then there
Yep.
was something that you could layer over the top of it that bolstered that damage. And then there was like it didn't say anything about whether force movement counted. So you just like lay this fucking this AoE spell on them. It gets all these guys ongoing damage. You bolster that damage up. Every square they leave, they take 15 damage, and then you thunder wave them 30 feet across the
Yep.
room, and they're just fucking like 8 guys are dead. And
Hmm.
you're just like, holy fuck, that's broken. Um, but the point I wanted to make about that, which was more akin to what you were talking about, is you almost when you do this, when you multi-class, you're also placing a lot of trust in yourself because
Hmm.
if your GM isn't super experienced with it and doesn't, you can't expect your GM to know every class feature for every class
Yep.
and what you have. And so what that means is your safety net and for how it operates properly is kind of gone. And also be prepared for kind of a lot more rules adjudicating. Like, how does that work? How does that work synergistically? Because it's just not as straightforward. Because D&D in particular kind of assumes a siloed approach, and it's part of the reason that it's so detrimental to the game is because it assumes a siloed approach, but then it muddies the water with by allowing multi-classing. So the games that like have it as a precept, it works more smoothly because it's like the assumption that you will, and it's much more ingrained. Where it's like D&D kind of goes, all right, if you want to do this, like here's how this plays off of the other things, and here's what the criteria you have to meet. But you're not gonna, and it's like no, but people will if there's a big incentive to do so.
Yeah, totally. The last one for the trade-offs is this is another one that David brought up earlier. The multi-class tax is what they like to call it. It's the requirements that you need. Many systems impose prerequisites, ability scores, background, or limit combinations for multi-classing.
Yeah, it gets muddy because sometimes things bump up against, like if you have divine magic and you have arcane magic and you have pact magic, it's like, well, how do those all work off one another? And it's like not super clear all the time. They try to hamstring you, and it's like, yeah, I don't know that it
Yeah, I'm
really
trying
ever.
to remember what I had at one point. Was it a sorcerer warlock? There was something that I was, or maybe I had a like the feat of like arcane initiate or something with the
Mm,
warlock. But I remember at one point I had spells, but I also had, but then I had pack magic as well. So I had to keep track of warlock spell slots, which came back at a short rest, and then my regular spell slots that came back after a long rest, and it was,
yeah,
and got to
yeah,
remember what level the warlock ones are at.
the warlock kind of fucks everything up, like in D&D. The warlock is probably just it just mucks everything up because it's spells. You get fewer spell slots, but they come back at a short rest, and they're always cast at the maximum level. And then when you layer over that the more traditional cleric, bard, wizard spell casting, ways,
Hmm.
then it just gets complicated. And similarly with like other types of magic, when in beast form mucks up a bunch of stuff too. So
That might have been what it was. It might have been bard warlock,
yeah.
and I was trying to put those two together.
Hmm.
Yeah, other way that was actually kind of a headache, and I don't know if I would ever do that again. I have a short list here of when not to multi-class. First of all, when you want a reliable, specialized endgame capstone, like a pure class spellcaster with the highest level spells. If you ever want to play a spellcaster who gets to use ninth level spells, don't multi-class.
Yeah.
When campaign level is low slash short, multi-classing pays off over many levels. Short campaigns will often penalize it, where you will usually be lacking. If you care about this, uh, it becomes unbalanced where you are less powerful than the rest of the group if it's a short, low, or short campaign. If you're not going to be going past level 5, you're going to be behind everybody uh, for a while. And then the last one is when complexity will reduce your fun. If extra bookkeeping will slow the play, prefer feats, items, or role play alternatives instead of multi-classing. Because if you're not a fan of bookkeeping, don't multi-class because you'll be going through the book a lot.
It's well, not to mention, here's what I think is particularly kind of strange about some some classes are already almost like a multi-class, like subclasses especially. So it's like the Eldritch Knight is already like a fighter
Hmm.
wizard,
Yep.
right? The
Hmm.
Paladin itself is already like a cleric plus a fighter.
Arcane
And
trickster.
yeah, the Arcane Trickster is already a wizard plus a rogue. And there's all sorts of stuff like this, right? But like I said, even some of the base classes. I mean, what is a ranger? A ranger's basically like a barbarian plus a fighter, like with a little bit of spells thrown in, which
Hmm.
still makes very little sense to me. I don't understand the ranger and spells, but
Yeah, the ranger was always like, it's a little bit of a fighter with the hint of druid with a little bit of rogue, and
yeah, there
then
you go.
throw in
Yep.
some spells.
Yeah, the ranger is almost already like it's like if you want to play in like an outdoorsy type of character, but is not as crunchy as a druid, but also not as savage as a barbarian because you want to be more like an archer, but you don't want to be a fighter. You want to have like some things that involve tracking and outdoorsmanship and like all the and maybe and get some spells because apparently that's the thing a ranger does.
Mm.
But like it's like that's already kind of and I mean hell even the bard is kind of like a wizard plus a rogue with a little
Yeah.
charisma on top,
Hmm.
and it's like so there's already and then you throw in subclasses and it's like there's already so much there, like thematically, that it just seems like the only purpose is to just kind of cherry pick and create this stew that's designed to overpower your character, and that it just unless you're playing in one of those really, really like death trap kind of fucking campaigns, GM versus players, I just don't get the need to do that. And having a particular lane that your character is in, um, as far as the mechanics of his character and the role in the group, to me is in the spirit of a heroic fantasy party based game. So
Mhm. So now that I gave you some reasons why maybe not to multi-class, I'm going to give you some common multi-class archetypes out there in
okay.
case you want to try something. Like the striker optimization build, rogue to level 3, and then
Hmm.
fighter X. You can just go right straight fighter after that. You gain mobility, sneak damage, and action surge with extra attack later on with your fighter levels. That's like your base multi-class
I would
striker
posit,
optimization.
yeah, I would posit throwing in a level of ranger just so you can get hunter's mark, and then maybe even up to the level, I think it's the subclass, the level 2 or 3. Like when if you can have hunter's mark, sneak damage, and then either colossus slayer or what's the other
Ooh.
one, horde breaker, right? Like if you
Ooh.
can go sneak attack, then that, and then go fighter from there, then it's like you can have. I guess it might even work with like hex too, but you have hunter's mark and you put a hunter's mark on something, and then you use colossus slayer, then you use like, you know, 2 or 3 dice of sneak attack damage. And so it really depends on whether you want to be an A to B striker. Like the fighter's going to get more attacks.
Hmm.
So if you're stacking those on each attack, it's going to be more. But if you want like high singular damage output, then you want to scale up the rogue's sneak attack, right? Like keep getting levels in rogue so that you end up getting 46, 5d6 for fucking sneak attack. But ultimately, it'll probably end up being more overall damage output with the fighter's extra attacks. But yeah,
Uh,
like if you can layer ranger on that too, it's super
yeah,
deadly.
then you're getting that's a big boy striker optimization. The Smite caster, Paladin X, Sorcerer Y. Doesn't matter how many levels you put in either one.
Yep.
You get after that you get high damage melee smites powered by converted spell resources. You
Hmm.
convert those spell points into spell slots, and you're smiting for days.
It's
And you're just gonna piss everybody off because you're gonna be doing hundreds of points of damage at level
it,
4.
it's but that build in particular is like one of the ones that it's like, oh, you can stack it. And hundreds of points at damage at level 4 might be a bit much, but probably 35, 40 points of damage wouldn't be you're like one shot killing most fucking enemies.
There was
Um
a well, I don't remember what level. We were over level. We were probably like around level 8 when Patrick did his Paladin in the Curse of Strahd campaign, where
he
he
did
critted on
70.
that one smite and he
Yeah,
did like 100.
it
He
was
did.
I think 73 points of
It was
damage in
still. It
one
was
attack.
a lot.
Yeah, but something like, oh, paladin plus sorcerer, it's like try to grok what kind of character that is. That's such a bizarre like thing that you'd have to reverse engineer a character that makes sense from those two classes. Like in order, like it doesn't
They're
ever, it's not coming about organically, I guess.
they're both charisma based classes, and the whole reason for sorcerer is just for spell points, converting spell points into spell slots for smite. That's it.
No, I get that. I'm saying mechanically it works, and it works because they're both charisma based spellcasters. But one is a devout and divine warrior, and another
Hmm.
is one that taps into the natural magic of the weave. Like, how do you marry those together in something that seems like a cohesive personality? It's like
Yeah,
it's
that's
just there
where it
for
comes
mechanics.
like creating your own class out of them, really.
Yeah.
There's the Battlecaster, which is one level in Hexblade Warlock, and then Fighter X Sorcerer Y. You can put as many levels as you want into those two. There you get weapon abilities, spellcasting, and meta magic for action economy synergy. That one again is mostly for uh, with the Hexblade Warlock and Fighter already, it's almost putting them together, but you can use your fighter abilities with Hexblade because now being a Hexblade Warlock, your charisma is all of your melee abilities instead of rolling strength. Same thing with Sorcerer. It works synergy yet
It's
again.
yeah, it's oh yeah, we forgot earlier about the not only is the Eldritch Knight like a fighter mage, but so is the Sword Mage, the
Hmm.
subclass of the fucking wizard. It's like that also arrives at kind of a tanky build of a spellcaster. So again, it's like hitting it from two angles even
Yeah.
there.
The skill monkey slash face, one of my favorites, as you'll see, bard slash rogue or bard slash ranger. It doesn't matter what levels you put into either one of them. You can continuously put them in both of them, but it's usually just those two classes. You get social tools, expertise, and exploration utility. With bard rogue, wait, does the ranger get expertise as well? Oh, I don't know. I can't remember.
No.
Yeah,
No.
I don't remember. But bard and rogue, you get expertise up the wazoo, and next thing you know, you're proficient in fucking 10 to 12 skills.
Well, I mean, first of all, the rogue already starts with, I think, four proficient skills, and the bard, especially that build works particularly well if you take either human or half elf too, because half elf gets like an extra two or three proficiencies, and a human gets an extra proficiency, and you could, and if you're a human, you could take, for your feat that you get a proficient skill, and for your feat you could take training and skills, so you get three more. So you could start with like 9 or 10 trained skills and then bolster expertise on like 3 or 4 of them, and those two classes actually, in my estimation, kind of go together fairly well.
Yes, they do. And then the last one of my favorites, is the tank with utility. Take life domain cleric and paladin. You get survivability, massive heals, and aura support. You are a living tank. But that is pretty much everything that you really need to know on multi-classing, unless you wanted the actual history of it, which I'm not going to give you because I don't know. I don't even remember. I don't know if it came out in first edition, second edition, or just AD&D in general. But with this is kind of like a nice little intro to what I wanted to do next time, because I think I want to go into more classless systems, talking about how classless works. Like we could talk about multi-classing games where, like Cloudbreaker Alliance, you got to do at least 2 classes. Fabula Ultima, they suggest that you do up towards 5 classes. Sword World does the same thing that Barbarians of Lemuria does, pretty much, where your class is your skills, which we will all talk about next time when we start going over, hopefully, if I can get the all my shit done for it, where we talk about classless skills and classless systems, where it's a little bit more skill-based, because I do love a good skill-based system. But I think that's going to be the end of this episode. For all of you out there that might have an idea for us to do, or, hey, did we miss anything? Did I miss anything? Really, I put together this episode. David had nothing to do with it. He added on to it. He did great. Did I miss anything? Let me know. Send it to insidethegmstudio@gmail.com. Let me know if I missed anything. Let us know if we need to talk about anything. Let us know if we're doing good. We don't, nobody's ever said that we've been doing great or good or bad. We should know, let us know. We don't know if we need to work on anything if you don't tell us. So send it in. Or come over and watch us live, usually every Sunday at 9 p.m. Eastern at twitch.tv/InsideTheGM Studio. Come in, talk in the chat, ask us some questions. Maybe we'll answer it. Who knows? I'm not always looking at it. But for this week, for Inside the GM Studio, I have been your host, Matt.
And I am David.
Hey, good night.